Ullman, alongside the Earl of Grey. Tom K.
What's up, man?
How are you?
Dude, doing good.
Good. I'm doing well, thank you.
Ready to dive into some science?
I'm ready to do a swan dive, can opener, as you might say. Yes.
Making a big splash.
I can't out crown the cannonball champ over here, though.
I've won a few upstate championships.
Is that serious? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe one.
Okay.
All right.
How's your week, Tom?
Good.
Good. Did you have to dig your way out of all the snow that we got this past weekend? Or?
Thankfully, we didn't get any.
No.
But we're going to be talking about who did.
Yes. Was it you? Maybe.
Maybe a little further away than down the road.
Yeah, could be. So, thank you guys for joining us. This is, of course, trèSci Weekly. This is our weekly show where we talk about trending science news topics. We are live every Monday night at 8:30 p.m., where you can join us on our YouTube channel. Of course, the show is live, so you can chat with us in our chat room there. If you can't catch the show live, that's totally fine. It always goes up after the fact on our YouTube channel.
Yes, it does.
So if you like what you see there, of course, please consider subscribing to the channel so you get the alerts as to when a new video posts. And if you like what you see, you can thumb up the video as well. And if you don't, you can thumb it down. That's fine too. You can always join some of our social media pages there. We've got a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and an Instagram.
Yep.
Those are all their respective
trèSci Weekly.
Exactly. Facebook.com/trèSci Weekly, Twitter.com/trèSci Weekly, Instagram.com/trèSci Weekly. And finally, we have a Patreon page as well, patreon.com/trèSci Weekly, where if you can throw us a few bones to do the show, that would, of course, be much appreciated. But,
of course.
No pressure. Times are tough. Gotta, the holidays coming up, man. Jeez.
Oh, boy.
Tom, have you done any holiday shopping yet? Yeah, I mean,
haven't done as much as I'd like.
No,
but it's always that way.
Exactly.
Bye.
Thank God for Amazon. Tom, let's begin the show with the lightning round.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Are you ready? Okay. Numero uno. I want to talk a little bit about this polar bear story that's been going around. National Geographic.
Yep.
Tweeted out.
I saw it on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
Watched the video.
I watched the video. I actually didn't watch the whole thing because it was making me too sad.
Too sad.
Way too sad. But anyway, Nat Geo, they what's the word I'm looking for? They contract out filmmakers to go and collect wildlife films of what's going on around the world. And this one conservation group by the name of Sea Legacy got footage of a starving polar bear on Baffin Island.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, it's brutal. Actually, Kyle, if you don't want this image to be up for too long, that would be okay to nix it. I just wanted people to know what we were referencing here in this first story. But yeah, they put this out, and kind of the hope was that it would stir up some conversation about climate change
and conservation efforts.
Exactly. Yeah. So the polar bear has kind of gone on to become the unofficial poster child of climate change because
it's a big animal that lives where the ice is.
Yeah. So they're obviously affected by this, quite a bit. Many people on social media have responded to this particular National Geographic tweet asking,
yeah, like, why didn't you throw him a few bones, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why didn't you help out the polar bear? You obviously probably had a crew with food, and this is a starving animal. How dare you? But the filmmaker rightfully points out that when you get into wildlife photography, you are supposed to take a completely hands-off approach. Right?
Just film the wildlife.
Yeah, and that means even in the wake of watching an animal suffer and essentially starve to death, it is not your place to intervene and change what is happening in that animal's environment.
While you're filming the animals, you don't have to feed all the ones who didn't find food that day.
Yeah. So I wanted to point that out. The other thing I wanted to point out, Tom, is that there seems to be some disparity between the imagery here and its kind of relation to climate science.
Yeah. So I saw one headline that kind of said, "This is what climate change looks like, and I want everybody to see it." But there's a little more to it than that, right?
Absolutely.
It's just one bear.
Yeah. So reading through the comments a little bit, wildlife biologist Jeff W. Higdon replied to some of the tweets here. And he, a long series of tweets. If you guys have time, I would check it out because, it clarifies a lot of what's going on here. But I wanted to read a couple of the tweets in that series there.
Yeah.
So the first one, quote, statements like, and then he goes on to quote, polar bears are going extinct and here it is in real time, which he says is an original statement associated with the video, said something to that effect, are easy to attack and thus don't help, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
I don't think just by showing a sick bear, you're going to inspire people to...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, people that are following Nat Geo probably don't need that
reinforcement.
Yeah. That kick in the butt. He goes on to say, quote, this animal would fall way outside the 95%, what's the word I'm
confidence.
Confidence interval, thank you, for body condition in a sample from any of these MUs, which those are the management units, basically, of the polar bear population. So saying 95% of the animals that are there that are under these management units
aren't under those conditions. They
exactly
don't look like that.
Exactly. So this is he goes on to say shouldn't be ignored, of course, but shouldn't be treated as representative either. What do you think about that, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, you can use it to tell the story of one bear. You can kind of relate it to all the other bears and see what kind of situation they would be in if their habitat would be threatened much more and more and more. But I don't think you really need to see it. I think we're all smart enough to know what happens.
Yeah.
But
he goes on to say, quote, that bear is starving, but in my opinion, it's not starving because the ice suddenly disappeared and it could no longer hunt seals. The East Baffin Coast is ice-free in summer. It's far more likely that it is starving due to health issues.
Yeah, so in this particular picture, it's the polar bear, and it's just on the natural ground with no ice. So it's like, oh my God, there's no ice left.
Yeah.
But there's no ice there in the summer.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of people reacting to that.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out, he says, quote, osteosarcoma, a type of bone cancer, has been recorded in polar bears and grizzly bears too. Source is Zubiquity, What Animals Can Teach Us About Being Human, a 2012 book by Dr. B.N. Horowitz and K. Bowers, end quote.
So that guy thinks that this particular polar bear just happens to be sick, and he's not representative of the whole sample.
Right.
So my last question to you before we move on is, how are the polar bears on the extinction level? Should we be worried?
So we took a look at this in some of our research leading into the show. Polar bears are threatened right now. They're
not on the endangered species list, but they're under threatened, right?
So in a threatened category titled vulnerable. So they're not thriving because obviously sea ice extent is receding, making it harder for the polar bears to survive in their natural conditions. But that being said, we do have management units that look after the polar bear populations just to keep tabs on their numbers and whatnot. And so although this is a very sad story, maybe we should all do a better job picking and choosing what we use as the flag for climate change, right?
Instead of calling us the bad guys, that's causing this guy to suffer before he dies.
Yeah.
It's not a good way to paint a picture for it.
Yeah, definitely not.
All right, moving on.
Next story. You want this one? Or
yeah.
You want me to do it?
I was just reading chat. The chat started chiming in.
Hit me with that chat, Tom.
Calling me out. I'm not spacing out.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't saying you were.
Let's see. What do we got going on? Andy Dunscombe said people would probably be more receptive and objectively presented information which they can process as opposed to here's an almost impossible symptom of insurmountable problem, feel guilty.
Yeah.
Makes a decent point there.
Definitely. I think that, there's plenty of examples of how climate change is really affecting certain populations of animals. It's hard to maybe capture that and snip it down into a short film that you can digest on a medium like Twitter or Instagram for that matter.
Yeah.
So you have to tread lightly, right? Because it's important to get that message out there to lots of people, but you also have to very explicitly choose the right circumstances to show people, because otherwise, Dr. Higdon says you can pick apart that argument pretty quickly if you're not careful with the details of it.
Yeah. James made another pretty decent point. You'd be surprised how the general public responds to objective information in science. A lot of times people latch on to that emotional things. And, it's tough to just put it out there and not have to give them a way to feel about it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's tough. For sure. But moving on, next topic. We are talking about wildfires. Still, we've mentioned wildfires in the recent past, I believe.
Yeah, we haven't really...
But we never really went into it, right?
Yeah, we haven't spent too much time describing the wildfires. They've kind of just been an addendum to the hurricanes that have been going on.
Yeah, just natural disasters.
There's lots of bad stuff happening in the Gulf, but there's wildfires over on the West Coast.
So 2017, super active when we're talking about destructive weather. But we've talked about it in California, and it's been going on for months. It's obviously not all just one giant fire. Like sometimes it starts up and moves in an area, but this has been going on all throughout the season. California got hit with their wine country. A lot of those crops just completely burned. Hillsides, people's homes.
Now here's my question, Tom.
Yes.
Do they not have Smokey the Bear on the West Coast?
Only you.
Because we seem to not have too many problems with wildfires, knock on wood, over here in real America. No, I'm just kidding.
I like how you led me into that, though, because it's not really things you can prevent, which we can talk about. That in California, the conditions for wildfires are sort of there.
Right.
And even though we're in December, we made a good point that it doesn't matter how cold it is for a fire to burn. And that a lot of times you start fires when it's extremely cold for the warmth. So as long as they have those dry conditions, and in this particular area of California, we're talking about this newest wildfire, the Thomas wildfire, I believe it's called.
That's you.
Exactly. It's being listed as one of the top 5 largest wildfires in California history.
Oh dear. And
just to give us a little perspective, like I was mentioning, this area has very low humidity. So what does that mean? Wet or dry?
That means dry.
Yeah, low humidity. It's very, very dry. And this particular area is by the mountains. So as the wind is coming over, as it's dry, it gets funneled in, and it's actually just always windy there. That's why they call it the Santa Ana winds. They just sort of name it after the area.
Okay.
It's just always windy there. So when you have dry, windy conditions and it hasn't been raining for a while, this is what we see, this massive fire burning a large part of California.
Yeah.
And there's been some pretty amazing images out there. Have you seen the one, it's like their version of the expressway, some giant highway, and just burning hills in the background?
I did see that one.
Yeah, that one was pretty amazing. And then there was a man who was trying to save a rabbit.
I saw that guy too.
He was like right off the road in these massive flames, and then he's like trying to grab a rabbit. I think he saves it. I'm pretty sure.
Kudos to that guy.
Yeah, I don't know if I would stop when the whole forest is burning down to grab a rabbit, but props to that guy.
Yeah. What we're looking at is satellite imagery via NASA's Twitter account here, showing...
Yeah, so you can literally see the fire burning over the satellite image.
Yeah.
You see it start and then spread.
I want to say that this is infrared imagery, so you can, sort of follow the fire as it moves, I guess, a little bit northwestward from its original point outside of Ventura, California.
And just to finish this one up, we did a little bit of research and saw that these Santa Ana fire events take place about once every 20 years on average, and they last about 1.5 days on average, and they do tend to occur more frequently during a La Nina season. Mm-hmm. So we're in La Nina right now.
Right.
We had very dry conditions. We had very low humidity for a long period of time, so all the conditions were right to create a fire in an area that's prone to it.
Yeah, the recipe worked out.
Yep.
So
But devastating for people who live there because it burns so much, just complete communities.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, our hearts go out to those people that are affected. Of course, no, it's not pleasant to see anybody's home getting burnt down.
No.
And yeah, to anybody who, has been affected, we thinking of you. That stinks.
Yeah, I'm hoping with these fires as they happen more and more that the warning system's better, because we mentioned last time some of the fires people were like right in the mess of stuff and they had to get out of there. So hopefully the warnings get a little better.
Yeah. Huh. Kayla Riley in the chat says that Paul Nicklin, who is the co-founder of the Sea Legacy from the polar bear video, with wife Christina Mittermeier, was in New York City this weekend talking about the video, and yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that they were in New York City.
Talking about the polar bears?
Yeah. I'm sure this is getting a lot of media attention. I mean, we're covering it, so interesting.
Cool. Moving
on, number 3. We're talking about supermassive black holes, Tom.
Oh boy.
This one comes by way of Universe Today. They're saying too big, too soon. Monster black hole seen shortly after the Big Bang. Basically, what we're looking at is a black hole that they've detected that is so far away that it must have originated right after the beginning of the universe, like just after the Big Bang happened.
Yeah, so when we're looking at light, we're always looking at how far it's traveled.
Right. So there is this relationship between when you look at something far away with a telescope, you are essentially looking back in time because the speed that light travels at is constant. It's finite and constant. So if I'm looking at the sun, for instance, and I don't recommend that anybody looks directly at the sun, but if you were to look directly at the sun, you would be seeing the sun as it appears 8 or so minutes ago, because the light takes 8 minutes to travel from the surface of the sun to the Earth.
So once we have that, you just move the sun, instead of being our sun, it's a star much further away, and then it just takes the light that long to get there. Right. So you see the object as long as it took for the light to get to you.
Right.
That's how old it is.
So sometimes you'll hear that astronomers have seen to the edge of the observable universe. That means that they can't look any further away because light hasn't had enough time to travel across the universe to your eyeball yet. So basically the observable universe is thought to be about 13.7 billion years old. And this particular black hole that they've discovered is located over 13 billion light years away from Earth. So it happened within those first 700 million years after the universe basically started after the Big Bang.
Yeah, so to have a black hole of 800 solar masses in that early of a universe, it doesn't really make sense, right?
Doesn't make sense at all.
With what we know.
So, yeah, so basically what I have here as notes is that this challenges astrophysicists' hypothesis on how black holes form. Basically, they observed it in a region where they would think that this occurs before something called the reionization epoch. And that would mean that there hasn't been enough time for hydrogen to be ionized or to be excited by any energy around it. And when they actually observe this particular supermassive black hole, they can detect what's called neutral hydrogen around it. So it has indeed not been ionized yet. So they think that this all makes sense in terms of the time frame of where they're looking at it, but it doesn't make sense when you just think of physics being consistent over that amount of time.
Okay, just to re-summarize, to try and get the point across. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at it, and it took 13 billion years for that light to come to us. So it's 13 billion light years away.
Correct.
And then we also see that it was indeed formed in that very early universe, like that light says, because of the type of hydrogen that it's made out of.
Right.
So, yeah, it all makes sense with the timing, but not the physics to make a black hole in that amount of time.
Right. So yeah, how do you concentrate
that much mass?
Right,
When there's not
800
that much
million
stuff there.
times the mass of the sun. How is that concentrated into a black hole when
There's not even like stars or stuff out
right?
there
And we think that a star has to go through its entire life cycle before it
to
can
eventually become a black hole.
and that would take longer than
Just that short amount of time.
Right. So this is mysterious, Tom. Either something is maybe not accounted for in the study, but I mean, we don't really know all that much about the very early universe either. So maybe physics is just wacky and weird that early on.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll learn something about some wacky physics.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Absolutely.
So Andy in the chat, thank you, Kyle, for getting rid of the spam bots. Spam bots in the chat today.
We must be doing something right if we're getting spam bots in the chat. That's good.
Andy said that we were done talking about it, but the Thomas wildfire burned at least 65,000 acres, while Long Island Pine Barrens was around 7,000 acres, just to put it in a size perspective.
Wow, thank you. Yeah,
and then true. His next comment was all fires together are over 200,000. And I remember reading that it was something like, the Thomas fire alone is over 200,000 acres. Just this latest fire.
Yeah.
That's so much land just being completely burned.
Seriously huge.
Unreal.
Wow. Thank you guys for that supplementary information, though. This is great.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Moving
on from black holes. We don't know why they're there that way, but we'll let you know
when
we figure them out.
We'll get back to you on that, basically.
All right. We are talking about Winter Storm Benji now.
Benji.
So yeah, we didn't get a lot of snow here, right?
Thank God.
But turns out somewhere got some snow.
Yeah.
And that was mostly Georgia, and in the Georgia area, sort of a line all the way down south into Texas. And I saw a cool graphic by the National Weather Service that, when have you ever seen this many states talking about like the central states not get snow and all the southern ones get snow?
Yeah.
So a pretty rare event. So we got some stats about Winter Storm Benji. It's let's see. So San Antonio, which is in Texas, had 1.9 inches of snow, and it's the first time they've had measurable December snowfall since 1946.
Wow. That's
pretty
long
crazy.
Time to go without snow.
Yeah, most people have never seen snow there. Granted, it was only a couple inches, but pretty amazing. And the last time anybody in Texas saw snow was in 2004. So what are we looking at? That's like 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I think they got like a little dusting.
Wow.
Not even anything like this one. And the most snow, highest accumulation, was in Georgia. Accumulated 18 inches of snow down there in Georgia.
Yeah, Mountain City, Georgia was the city, I think. 18 inches, man. That's nothing to sneeze at.
No.
A foot and a half of snow it's a lot of snow.
It probably looks pretty funny on all that southern foliage.
Yeah.
All those tropical looking trees just mobbed down with snow.
Kayla and I went to visit some friends in Atlanta last year, actually. And they are from here originally, Long Island. So when they moved down there, the first year that they were down there was actually a snowfall. And people freaked out. Like they had no idea how to like deal with it down there, because we were saying the infrastructure is really not built around plowing or shoveling or any of these things. So they have to,
like we mentioned, anytime you get a big snowfall, there's a lot of plows who are like, all right, I gotta go out and I get paid to do this job.
Right.
Like people are always ready for that every year here.
Yeah.
Because that's a way to make money. But down there, nobody has plows.
Yeah.
Just sitting around waiting.
They had to borrow all that equipment from other states and whatnot. So
yeah, definitely a logistical mess when it snows down there.
And our one friend said that while she was kind of commentating on like how it wasn't that bad of a snowfall, like her coworkers were like, are you kidding me? How dare you? People died, like, so, really not too built for dealing with snow down in the South, but hopefully people got to enjoy it at least, day off from school or whatnot.
And then, Kyle, did you get a chance to bring up the second image, the one with the jet stream? So in that image, we see the jet stream going all the way down into Texas. Now, this is just a graphic, so I'm not sure if this is an exact representation of exactly where the jet stream was, But this was in their graphic to show you the extent of where the cold air was coming from, and the jet stream dipping all the way down there into Mexico. When you follow weather for quite a long time like I do, you really don't ever see that.
Hot like Mexico.
Hot like, yeah. It's usually hot like Mexico, not like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so even little parts of Mexico saw snow. My sister was just recently in Mexico, so I was thinking to myself, how funny would that be if it snowed and you finally go all the way to Mexico?
Yeah, right.
But she just missed that by a little bit.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, pretty wild how far south this one dipped.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that was courtesy of the Weather Channel's tweets there. So
yeah, Weather Channel's good stuff when you're looking for info.
Oh yeah. Cool. Nancy Cleta in the chat said we had on and off snow about 2 to 3 inches. I would say that's pretty much in line with what we had as well.
It just wasn't really sticking to the roads.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's nice. Moving on. Number 5. Talking about narwhals, Tom.
You ever see that YouTube video?
Narwhals, we are narwhals. Yeah, I've seen it. Watch us get a copyright strike for that.
Just for
that rendition of it. Tom, what is a narwhal?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the unicorn of the sea.
Yeah,
right. It's like a mammoth-looking thing with a unicorn horn, basically.
Yeah,
a giant horn at the top of its head.
Yeah, I can't imagine happening upon this creature just in the wild. Yeah, I wouldn't have believed it exists.
Yeah, whoa. And they like to study them because they do really deep dives into the water.
Yeah, so
down there.
That's kind of where this news topic comes from. Is a study was being conducted looking at the heart rate of narwhals as they dive down into deep depths. As with some other marine animals, they can lower their heart rate to preserve the oxygen in their blood when they know that they're going to be making a pretty deep dive. So researchers wanted to kind of put some statistics to that and see if they could measure exactly how narwhals do it. And what they found, Tom, was that after capturing the narwhals, I believe in a net, and attaching these
sensors
these sensors with like in the bathroom, those
sticky pads.
Yeah, those sticky pads. It's kind of similar how they would attach them with it. They would measure the heart rate immediately, and the narwhals were actually lowering their heart rate down to 3 beats per minute, which is really, really low heart rate, lower than what they would find later on, as they were doing it more naturally. So what they thought was happening was that the narwhals were getting all stressed out from being in human
contact with somebody. Yeah.
Right. And so they have this fight or flight response where they want to escape, so they whip their tails, to
quicker and quicker to move.
Quicker to push them down and submerge themselves into the water pretty quickly, like 25 times per minute. They're kicking their tails down. But they're also lowering their heart rate because
very low,
because they know they're diving deep into the water, and
so to flee from a predator and dive down deep at the same time, that seems like
it's
pretty tough on their body.
Exactly, it's a physically demanding action, and lowering your heart rate when you do physically demanding,
usually you want more blood, more oxygen to do things.
Exactly. So the researchers are thinking like this is potentially dangerous for the physiology of the narwhal, because if it's going to be that maybe humans are going to come into more contact with them as sea ice extent does recede and more boats are kind of crossing the paths of them, that they could literally put themselves in cardiac arrest by trying to
run away and dive.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, hopefully, Tom, on last week's episode of trèSci Weekly, when we talked about the Arctic fishing ban,
we said they couldn't fish for 16 years, I think it was.
So hopefully that will help alleviate some of this stress that might be put on the narwhals. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Right? We'll see about that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else to say about narwhals.
Yeah, not today, I guess.
We actually played a video game one time where you had to stab the other narwhal in the belly.
Yeah, Starwall.
It's called
game
Starwall. I actually just remembered that out of nowhere.
That's a good good PlayStation game. Yeah, Star Wall.
Video game with narwhals.
It's difficult to line it up. Get the horn right through the heart.
In the sweet spot.
Yeah, fun game.
All right, moving on.
Number 6.
We're talking about gene therapy.
2 thumbs up for gene therapy.
We've talked about it a few times in a few different cases. This time we're talking about trying to treat hemophilia with gene therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you inherit this disease, you are unable to produce a clotting protein called factor 9.
Okay.
And what a clotting factor is that it's a protein that gets made to tell your blood to clot when it needs to stop bleeding.
Right.
So when you have hemophilia, you are unable to do that.
Okay. So, for example, I cut my head by bashing it on the side of the table here.
Yeah, and if you had
I
hemophilia,
bleed.
you don't have the necessary clotting proteins to heal that wound. So
Okay.
you have to be very careful when you get a wound.
So I basically bleed for way longer if I
Yes.
don't have this. Okay.
So what they ended up doing in this, they did a test on some patients with gene therapy, and 9 out of 10 patients had no bleeding episodes following their gene therapy.
Wow.
And only 20% affected by the hemophilia have type B. Researchers are looking for new ways to treat the more common hemophilia A next.
Okay.
So this is a little bit more of a rarer case, but they did find a pretty successful way to help alleviate it using gene therapy.
That's awesome. 9 out of 10.
That's pretty good.
That's an A at Stony Brook for sure. Yeah, it's nice to see these little wins for gene therapy techniques in clinical trials, right? So, yeah, I mean, the more gene corrections we can do with gene therapy techniques, I think the more versatile it becomes as a practice, and
That's
then
used more often.
then
yeah.
right. I mean, then you can start branching out, right? Like, okay, well, we get funding because we know we can do
X,
this
Y, and Z
treatment,
with it,
that treatment, the other treatment, and then all right, well, let's research a little bit more down this avenue, right? So, I think that's good news overall.
Yeah, and just as an aside, I saw another headline. I didn't get to read it, but it was about gene therapy in a spinal cord case. I think damage to some sort of spinal nerves, and they were actually even able to do some sort of gene therapy intervention in that to sort of restore a little bit of the neural activity.
Oh, wow.
So I'll have to read up more about on that one and follow it for next week. But
Yeah.
gene therapy.
Yeah, it's
Gotta
coming
watch
around.
out.
Definitely coming around. Moving on. Number 7, Tom. This is a weird story.
Yeah. Let's see what we can do with this one.
Phys.org put up a story that physicists had discovered a new form of matter that they were calling excitonium. I want to read some quotes from this particular article because they get a little hefty in terms of the language being used. But yeah, we'll try and break it down as best we can. So, quote from the article, it says, "Excitonium is a condensate. It exhibits macroscopic quantum phenomena like a superconductor or superfluid or insulating electronic crystal. It's made up of excitons, particles that are formed in a very strange quantum mechanical pairing, namely that of an escaped electron and the hole it left behind." End quote.
So, first of all, this new form of matter, they say that it exhibits macroscopic quantum phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that when you have these weird interactions at the very, very small scale, this sort of matter also displays that feature on a little bit larger scale. That's what they mean by macroscopic.
Mm-hmm.
So not just the very, very particle scale, minute.
Right.
And quantum phenomena like superconductors or superfluids, just to bring us in on the same boat.
Yeah.
What would be the properties of a superconductor, and why would that be important?
So a superconductor is interesting because it's a material that can allow the flow of electricity with zero resistive impedance. So
it doesn't heat up, it doesn't slow it down.
Right.
It allows, it essentially allows for an electric current to just go.
Yeah.
Without really needing anything to go behind it.
Exactly. So we do achieve superconducting properties with materials once we can cool them down to temperatures that allow them to become superconductors. Liquid nitrogen is one of the more versatile substances where we do this. We use liquid nitrogen basically to cool these metals down to
where they start acting like
exactly to the point where they allow now the flow of electricity with basically nothing stopping it, right? No energy is lost to heat. No energy is getting, stuck by things that are using it within the circuit. And so this is a big area of research for physicists because obviously this has
the applications in.
Right.
You could see where if you manage to control this somewhat more, what the possibilities could be.
Right. If we could achieve this on a grander scale
and actually put it into engineering practices,
right,
it would blow everybody's mind and change the game.
Exactly. So
just real quick, if you've ever been on YouTube, you can look up videos of superconductors and things like that, just to get a better feel for what they are. But in this case,
so now we're talking about excitonium, which is being kind of attributed to exhibiting these quantum phenomena like superconducting properties, but in a specific manner, right? And they say that it's due to an escaped electron and the hole it left behind. So I want to continue now with one more quote from the story here. They say it defies reason, but it turns out that when an electron seated at the edge of a crowded with electrons valence band in a semiconductor gets excited and jumps over the energy gap to the otherwise empty conduction band, it leaves behind a hole in the valence band. That hole behaves as though it were a particle with positive charge, and it attracts the escaped electron. When the escaped electron with its negative charge pairs up with the hole, the two remarkably form a composite particle, a boson, and what they're calling an exciton. End quote.
So they're saying if you have the outer shell where your electrons exist, and one of those electrons can become excited beyond that stage, that where that electron used to be, now there's a gap where it was a circle, and in the absence of a negative charge, you have a positive there, but it's not really a positive charge. It just sort of acts like there's a positive charge there because it's lacking the negative.
Right.
So you excite it out of its state, and then it wants to go back there because it's the negative and that's a positive.
Right.
So once you
so
once you excite it up and it comes back, then the result that they say they get when that happens is that you get an exciton, one of these particles that has these weird properties. Strange stuff. Yeah.
And now if this doesn't seem like it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to you, don't worry, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. But I thought that we would at least mention this because it kind of, makes the headline seem crazy, like physicists found a new form of matter. But I think the thing to keep in mind here, Tom, is that when we're talking about forms of matter, typically we think of solids, liquids, and gases in our minds. I think that what they mean by a new form of matter is just that this excitonium that they're calling it cannot be categorized as a solid, a liquid, or a gas. So they have to basically brand it
plasma. Yeah, it's just sort of something else.
Just something else. Don't expect to see excitonium
or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of in a heap in your backyard. But I also
it just requires that certain set of conditions and actions to come about.
Yeah. So I just want to mention too that they studied the transition metal dichalcogenide titanium diselenide, and were able to reproduce the results from using this transition metal 5 times. So
it's not just one and done.
They know what they're talking about. I kind of still don't. But that being said, hopefully this research will kind of push more knowledge into, how we can maybe utilize superconductors more within our search for free energy, basically.
Yeah, as soon as we finish the green energy, we'll just get the free energy.
Exactly. Yeah. Once we have all the solar panels set up,
and we're all good to go.
Yeah, then we'll worry about this. What's next, Tom?
All right, so we got radio signals from Oumuamua.
Oumuamua.
So what we're talking about, that's just the name that was given to that interstellar asteroid.
Mm-hmm.
We had the story where the asteroid came in on a really steep, I guess you could say, inclination, where it came from far away and it slungshot itself around the sun, and now it's on its way out of our solar system. And the scientific articles that we read said that they confirmed it was from a different solar system. It was from beyond our solar system.
Yep.
So now they're trying to get their last little look at it as it's on its way out.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, why are we trying to take a look at it? Didn't we already say we know it's from another solar system?
Yeah, so we want to look at it because we want to try to, try to look at the light that's coming from it and see if we can figure out what it's made of, right?
Because so if we see that it has some sort of H2O or something in it,
yeah,
it might tell us about the makeup of where it came from.
Yeah, and beyond whether or not it contains water, but like what kind of soil or minerals or dust or what is comprising this chunk of space rock that is floating now through our solar system but from another one, because the answer is either it's similar to what we see in our solar system, and then that kind of helps put a definitive answer onto how solar systems form across the galaxy, or it's made of different stuff, and then we have to figure out what that different stuff is and why. So really kind of an interesting question to ask either way.
But then there was another piece to this one we were reading about where maybe it's not just galactic driftwood, as they say. Maybe it's not just a random asteroid coming in. Maybe they make the argument for maybe on the off chance there's a 1% chance that this is how intelligent life wanted to probe our solar system. As crazy as that sounds, they wanted to take a look at it just to make sure that there's no... Well, they know that there's some sort of signal coming from it. They want to make sure it's not a form of intelligent communication.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I mean...
That's a little much, right?
That would be just insane if that's what it was. I think
he used the argument that even if it has a 1% chance of a 1% chance of being true, we have to act as with absolute certainty. It's like a South Park one.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah. I think unfortunately it's not even a 1% chance of a 1% chance. I think it's
shot. Yeah,
it's pretty shot.
It's an asteroid just coming in.
Yeah, but
we still need to know what it's made up of, so that's a good reason to look at it.
Right, and Scientific American put out a nice little article summarizing one of the methods that they're going to use, right, Tom? So, the Breakthrough Listen project is going to be pointing the 100-meter Green Bank telescope, which is located in West Virginia. That's a radio telescope, so it'll be kind of listening in, as you would basically try to listen to radio frequencies to see if there's anything intelligent coming from it. Odds are it won't be, but that's okay, because you can use that information, the radio signal, to study other things about it. So it's not just looking for intelligent
life signal.
Yeah.
But I thought that was funny that they mentioned that in their reasoning for wanting the telescope.
Yeah. Do you think...
I feel like it discredits you. I wouldn't have put that in. Like, I would have just said we're doing this and then secretly just be like, yo, is there anything coming from there?
Yeah.
Personally, but...
Yeah, I mean, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, them as an organization, they like to make the splash and hit the headlines with this kind of stuff. Yeah, because people are interested, But, that being said, Tom, I don't particularly think that intelligent alien life would use interstellar asteroids to probe our own solar system.
That seems like a really weird thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something I think that we here on Earth would think to do, right? We would just build a machine that can travel faster. So
if you knew where other intelligent life was, you wouldn't just throw a rock at them.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. So,
it's all right though.
That's okay. Well, Maybe
we'll learn
next
something.
maybe next week we'll be dead wrong and we'll be like, yeah, we watched an alien TV show actually. That was cool.
All right. And then the last little one we have.
The last one comes by way of BBC America, guys. The Blue Planet 2 premiere date has been set. It is set for Saturday, January 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on BBC Network or BBC America. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. Looking very much forward to watching.
We got a 4K TV to watch.
We got a 4K TV to watch it on now, courtesy of Chris. That's great. Yeah, this will be following Planet Earth 2, which premiered. That was just earlier this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, these documentary series are awesome. So
they are. They're so well made, so well done.
Yeah.
From the actual footage, which is like unbelievable. I can't believe the footage they get.
I know.
It's insanely top notch, and then the
narration by Sir David Attenborough is fantastic. So, yeah,
they don't like try and just shove ideas onto you. They kind of just show you the awesome power of nature.
Yeah,
good stuff.
So check that out on January 20th. Saturday
That's when
night.
we get it in the Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, this already premiered overseas
across the world. Yeah,
in the U.K. So don't look up any spoilers, I guess. And that, Tom, is the lightning round. So we'll move forward with our featured article for the week. Last week I covered study done on light pollution. We had another one in the pipeline, but we were running a little bit long on last week's episode, so we saved this one for this week.
We liked it.
Yeah, and Tom, you are going to dive on in to that one for us.
So I just realized, did we send the graphics over? We got them. You're smart, man.
I'm on it, dude.
So we're talking eyeballs right now. And what's really interesting is that we're going to talk about eyeballs in a species that doesn't even really need to use its eyes all that much because it doesn't even catch prey, but it has hundreds of eyeballs.
Ooh, is it bats?
Not bad.
No.
So I'm going to go into start with eyeballs and leave it on a cliffhanger to what are we actually talking about?
Okay, I like that.
So when we're talking about eyeballs, I mean, that's a pretty obvious thing you would want as an advantage to develop. You can see stuff and get it. So it's a very important evolutionary adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at eyes to see when they first started to come about, it's in the Cambrian period, about 485 million years ago. So, you know, eyes came about pretty early. And the only thing we're really looking at now is that did they all emerge like in one way? Do all organisms evolve eyes in the same way? How did all these creatures just sort of get eyes out of nowhere across many different lineages?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was reading, they say it's easier to think about how simple photoreceptive cells, so cells that are just sensitive to light.
Okay.
How did those cells turn into some sort of vestigial eye that you can see out of?
Right.
So when they talk about evolution, even though it happened along many different animals and lineages, that the mechanic of turning a photoreceptive cell into like an optic sort of situation,
yeah,
that's sort of the type of evolution that happened basically only one time that allowed these eyes to develop across many different animals.
Right. Okay.
So some animals have a whole bunch of eyes.
Right.
Some have 1, 2, you know.
Yeah.
But coming from just so simple cells to an eye is sort of the main feature.
Okay. So that would be a split then primarily for, I want to say, just the animal kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Plants, for the most part, don't have eyes.
No, yeah.
Right? Likewise with...
because they just
fungi
take in their... They
Right.
have no reason to see.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. I can get down with that.
So I made a teaser. Something has 200 eyes. Turns out all we're talking about is scallops.
Scallops. Little discs of nonsense,
Right.
as my good friend PJ once called scallops. More so talking about the food.
Yes.
Little discs of nonsense. I thought that was a clever way to describe what a scallop is.
It's used in hors d'oeuvres and stuff, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Like cocktail hour, party favorite type things.
Delicious, man.
Delicious.
Absolutely delicious.
Who would have known they have over 200 eyeballs?
Not me.
Not me. Until I read this
I didn't know they had any, to be honest with you, yeah.
Yeah, so it turns out they do have many times over 200 eyes, and each of those eyes contains millions of perfectly square, flat crystals that come together as a mosaic to make a picture. So they have extremely complicated eyeballs. So instead of a typical lens, where you have we think about it as a lens in our eyes, in 1960, a biologist named Michael Land showed that scallops use a mirror to focus light. So they have all these perfectly flat, square crystals that they somehow make, and it ends up creating a mirror effect, and that's how they see, instead of using a lens, which is pretty much how most organisms see.
Okay. So if we're talking in terms of my language, not so much a refracting telescope as a reflecting telescope, right? They're using mirrors, not lenses, in order to bounce the light back into their receptor.
Exactly.
Nailed it. Kyle, where's my PhD, bro? Hook me up.
So I have a few more stats for you guys. So here we go. Benjamin Palmer et al. At the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot, Israel, excuse me, showed using cryon electron microscopy. Ooh. We talked about that as one of the, I think, Nobel Prize candidates.
Yeah, Nobel Prize in chemistry. This year was the cryo-electron microscopy technique. So
they used that technique to look at the scallops to see how they use their mirrors.
Cool.
And it turns out that these mirrors of perfectly square, extremely tiny crystals are made up of guanine, which is extremely weird. So just last week we were talking about guanine when we were talking the genetic code. A, T, G, and C. Yeah. That's what the G is.
Right.
Excuse me.
So they have guanine nucleotides that formulate a perfectly square crystal mirror that they reflect light
off of to see.
That's wild. That's so bizarre.
And here's one of the crazier things is that guanine doesn't naturally form crystals. So if you were to just allow the conditions under which guanine would be a crystal, it wouldn't make square crystals in a laboratory. So one of the scientists in the study said that the scallop is somehow controlling the crystallization process. The scallop doesn't know how it's controlling it, I guarantee it. But, it's somehow how it's happening.
Yeah.
And quote at the end that I really liked was that the whole contraption is something like how a telescope pieces together individual hexagonal mirrors into one giant curve.
Right.
So some sort of crazy chemical eye that makes tons of tiny mirrors to see out of hundreds of eyes when it doesn't even really need eyes because it's not a predator looking for food.
That's true, yeah. At the end of all of this, scallops
don't even really use their eyes.
Yeah.
Right?
What they just eat little things that float around in the water. They don't really need to hunt.
And this seems like one of the most elaborate eye structures around.
That's bizarre.
I think one of the last few take-home messages would be that things just sort of happen sometimes in evolution, and that's really all you can say about it. That it's sort of the fact that it ended up this way wasn't out of necessity, out of the scallop wanting this many eyes. Sometimes I think it's just the run of the gambit where this is sort of just how this one ended up.
Yeah, I wonder what the conditions were like on Earth when scallops were developing this kind of
and why
feature.
Might they have needed it?
Yeah, and if there is any sort of evolutionary advantage to it back then, but
it also just seems so different too, though.
Like we were saying, is that even though that might not have any utility for the scallop, now you can't go back and erase out
all that stuff that happened.
Right, it's written into the DNA now, so that's just forever how scallops are gonna be.
Excuse me. That's it.
Yeah. Crazy story, Tom. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So in the chat, Karen said that people were asking, how do you get BBC?
Yeah, I mentioned that we streamed it straight from BBC's website last time we did Our Planet Earth 2 viewing. So I think you can just do that. But actually, Karen Kea also mentioned that you could get BBC America on Cablevision, which is a premium channel that you have to pay extra for. But
so you could stream it for free, but you can also get it on the...
Yeah, if you want to keep the channel and watch
other stuff.
Yeah. Top Gear, whatever the heck else they put on BBC America.
Exactly.
Yeah, Kyle's a big fan of Top Gear. That's what's up.
Yeah, so that was our last story. Don't forget us on social media throughout the week.
I just want to do the Friday poll results before we close out the show.
I forgot we are the poll masters.
Yes. So this past Friday's poll, it was a close 2-1 victory in the poll. Stegosaurus or Triceratops, and Stegosaurus managed to beat out the Triceratops in this week's Friday poll, Tom. So I wanted to throw up the image of the Stegosaurus that we had. Image credit goes to Susannah Maidment et al. And the Natural History Museum in London.
Classic Stegosaurus.
Classic Stegosaurus. And just a little bit of info about Stegosaurus, Tom. Stegosaurus was a large herbivore dinosaur, meaning that it...
Grass eater.
Yeah, it ate only plants, like me.
Right, you're a plant?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a plant. That roamed the Earth during the late Jurassic period, approximately 150 to 155 million years ago.
That reminds me, I saw a really funny tweet about this, that a T-Rex is closer in age to an iPad than a Stegosaurus.
I saw that too.
Because they existed in the Jurassic period, right?
Well, the information I got says the Stegosaurus is
in the Jurassic period. So they just put it in Jurassic Park just because.
Yeah, so the T-Rex is actually way later.
Way later, towards like the 65 million year old extinction.
Right.
They were around at the end.
Right.
So they were a lot closer to the iPad modern day now than they were to the Stegosaurus. But they just put them in the movie because you need all the dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't leave any of them out.
That's pretty crazy. That is funny to think that there's that much time where the dinosaurs
were just chilling.
Planet. Yeah. Insane.
Dinosaurs been around. Yeah, Jurassic Park's a lie. Thank you, James. That's what I was thinking about. Yeah, Jurassic Park just lies.
It's a good movie.
It is. It is a great movie, to be honest. I watch it whenever it's on.
Yeah,
the original,
the first one. Yeah, Jurassic World. See you later. Their most distinctive feature comes by way of the broad skeletal plates lined across their backs, as well as a spike-tipped tail. In fact, Stegosaurus literally means covered lizard. Tom. While the functions of the plates and spikes are still under research, scientists generally agree that the spikes were utilized for defense against predators, and the plates were probably used for display, as well as regulating temperature somehow. But they make it clear, actually, in the information I was reading, that the primary function was probably display, which I think means for mating purposes. Like, check it out, all my plates over here. You interested?
And when you look at the skeletal structure, they're bony. You know, they're part of the skeletal structure.
Right.
Yeah. They're not just these thingies on them.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they weren't covered in some sort of flesh.
Displaying material. Exactly. Yeah. That looked cool.
Yeah.
Who knows, right?
Yeah, maybe they had, bright orange flesh and like purple feathers popping out from all of them.
Like
Who
a
knows?
Peacock, right?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Not me.
Not me.
Yeah. Tom?
So we're going to have polls again next week? Maybe
we're going to do
expanded polls?
We're going to do another Friday poll next week. I am toying with the idea of just texting everybody on my phone again like I used to do, just to try to get the numbers jumping up there a little bit. But, and just for awareness purposes, right? Like, hey, we're back. We're doing these polls. We're collecting all this nonsensical data. Doesn't matter for anything. No, I wanted to also make mention that next week we'll do our regular show, but that will be the last show of the year for us.
Because then it's Christmas and holidays.
Following next week's show, Monday would be the 25th, Christmas Day. We're not going to do a show on Christmas Day. And then the week following that would actually be New Year's Day, January 1st, 2018. And we're also going to not do a show New Year's Day. We'll let everybody chill for the holidays with their respective.
We'll be back.
And then we'll be back. We'll be back swinging out the fences for 2018. A lot of good stuff.
A lot of new ideas.
A lot of new ideas. Yep.
So in that time we're not there. If you want to contact us, you can always tag us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any cool science stuff you see or would like to chat with us about. Always just tag us in any of that stuff.
We'll still be running the social media, so we'll be chatting with you guys left and right. Thank you guys, of course, for joining us for the episode, and we will see you all next week.
Latro.